Hello, YouTube, MMA community, fighting fans. We got another episode, Fighting Guru, breaking down, predicting fights for UFC. This week, we got a lot of MMA going on for MMA fans and betting people out there. There's a lot of fights to take advantage of, a lot of good spots we can bet on from between Bellator and UFC. There's great spots, and I love when they give us a week with 2 or 3 different events because it's a little different. Me being a parlay guy, hence the name Parlay King. When you give me more than one event inside of a week, I can usually find more safer spots, and that's when I can go parlay crazy. So when you give me 2 events, that's twice the amount of fights. I usually find twice the amount of safe spots, make twice the amount of money. So we did great on the last Bellator card. I posted 9 parlays, 1 3-legger, and then the rest of them, the other 8 were 4, 5, 6, and 7-leggers. The only one that we did not cash in, we made a killing, was the 3-legger. It was the Soto fight, which it was a robbery. It should have been a draw like the Phillips fight. So we lost a 3-legger, but the other 8 out of 9 parlays cashed in. And it was another event where we don't go more than 1 or 2 fights since the beginning of times. If you go back to October when I've started Bellator predictions and parlays, we've never had a losing Bellator event since the day I started my Patreon in October. So we're at 100% success rate for Bellator. It's a lot, I like Bellator because it comes down to fighting. It's not about names. They have a lot of new fighters, like Jalen Bates, the new breed, for example. That's AJ McKee's training partner who's going up against Pitbull. I made him my most confident pick of the year. He was the only guy I ever said to my patrons. That's why we brought him on the show for an interview. If you remember, I said for the first, and I might be the only time I've ever said this, I said, you guys can bet your house, go all in, take a loan out, put all your money, this guy's going to win the fight. He was a medium, he was a pretty good sized favorite, but he was 0-0. He never had his first professional fight. It was just from my research. So he had not had any fights at this time. The video was still out there where I said go all in. It was about a week before the Bellator event, before he fought his first time. If you go back on my YouTube channel, my video is still on there where I told you guys in my exact words, bet the house on him. If you want to put him in every parlay you make, and I've never said that about anybody, that you guys can put him in there, because I knew I seen his training videos, I seen his regional scene fights, and I seen his opponents fights even more importantly. So I knew it was just a huge mismatch, and the lines could have been even way wider, and it would have been justified. So that's why I said put him in every parlay. Like I've never said that about anybody, not even like the Shevchenkos and the Nunez's, because anything can happen. Robberies. I just knew this was going to be a huge mismatch. Wouldn't even go to the judges' scorecards, and if it did, you couldn't even justify. It'd be like 10-7 rounds, not even 10-8 rounds. And that's what happened. He beat him from pillar to post. He got him out of there really quick. It was not. I don't even think he absorbed a punch. So like that was one of the only times I've said go all in, when he was 0-0. And Bellator has always, I've had success because there's a lot of finishes, there's a lot of mismatches, there's not as much room for cheating and errors. Like people are, the bettors, you could tell them a jab is an uppercut and they'll say, oh, okay. They don't know their heads from their whats. So that's why you got like the Corey Sandhagen fight. If you looked at the betting websites, those like one of the websites that I use is MMAdecisions.com. Everybody voted Sandhagen won that fight. The unofficial judges, the Miranda Maverick fight, it wasn't even close. It was 22 out of 22 judges scored it for Miranda. For Phillips, it was 21 out of 22. Only one person didn't give it to either draw or Phillips. So like the judging was just, it's one of the worst events I've ever seen for judging. So it's not a coincidence. That's the only time that we had a bad event. In all my records, it's the worst event I've ever had. I've never had an event. And it's because I like to, my system is based around my most confident picks. I know how this works. they've always done robberies. This happened to be on a little bit of a higher. They did it in fights that were just so lopsided that it caused a lot of uproar. But they do this every week to us. So I found a way to avoid us from being affected by it. I only make the fights that I expect to be lopsided, the fights that I expect to be by finish. Those are our usually most important fights as far as the betting perspective, betting aspect goes. I revolve my betting and my parlays typically 80-90% around those fights that are mismatches. So I'll eat the chalk on it sometimes, or sometimes the betting community just doesn't even know what they're doing. They end up giving me guys who should be favorites, the Benil Darushas, Pantojas, and so sometimes I actually get good money. I get like plus money or pick 'em odds. So I don't mind making them 89. It works out better than those guys who are minus 400, who we see get, annihilated and beat by the underdog. So it works out more often than not when I revolve my night around the guys who I expect not to have much adversity. So it's been doing well. This event they made it impossible. Anybody who knows fights, who knows what should happen in a fight, could not have done good on this card. Unless you were psychic and said, okay, this guy's going to get screwed. This girl's going to get screwed. This guy's going to get screwed. I'm going to pick all the wrong people because I know they're going to get screwed. You would have done bad that night. Nobody successful in the line of betting could have done good. Those people bragging about, I had a great event, don't follow those people. Don't go with their bets. Those are people that typically lose. I guarantee you that, if they did good on last week's events. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the main event, Uriah Hall. And, this event is a perfect reminder of why I started doing this. This card, everybody's predictions, even former fighters. I was listening to Kenny Florian saying everything that those rookies, those amateurs, those guys who were working at McDonald's and woke up one day saying, I hate my 9 to 5. Let me try to be a YouTube fight analyst all of a sudden. Like they had it in them all this time and they didn't know it or something. Like the Lotons, the guys who he gives one lock of the week. He doesn't give you 4 or 5 like I do and I go 100% on them. Gives you one. He gave Ian Heinisch as his most confident pick. And that's why he charges $5, but at least give him something worth it, But not just him. A lot of people that I've been listening to people saying things about Uriah Hall is going to catch him. The guy's got knocked out one time in his career. Strickland has a loss to, it's a Brazilian guy. Can you pull it up? His name is Alesio's. If you're looking for names, a guy who can pronounce names, I'm not the guy. If you want a guy who knows fights, who can read fighting styles and languages and predict fights, I'm the guy. But names is not my thing. So, but Eliseo dos Santos, whatever, the only guy who holds a TKO victory.
Eliseo dos Santos.
Say it again.
Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos.
Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, blah blah blah. That guy's knockout was impressive, and it wasn't the type of a thing that Uriah Hall does. Uriah Hall and that guy, tomatoes and apples, not even close. Uriah Hall's a guy who he'll tell you this if you listen to his interviews. I wait for the mistakes. I capitalize on when they make mistakes. Like he's a counter striker kind of a knockout artist. Zalesio, if you watch that fight, he was planning that kick, that spinning wheel kick, for 2 rounds. He was setting it up. He kept throwing combinations ending with something different just to manipulate the movement and make it unpredictable. He was setting that kick up for a long time before he landed it. He knew where Strickland was going to be positioned based off of throwing fake, not necessarily fake, but he kept throwing the same types of combinations over and over to make him feel like he knows what's going to be coming. And then like the 7th time he did that combination, the 3rd part of it wasn't what he expected, and it turned out to be a spinning heel kick. That was a very calculated precision. Like that was well thought and well planned. Santos is a natural fighter. The guy comes from, what part of Brazil does that say he's from? I guarantee it's not nothing nice. Hold on a second. But that guy's a natural fighter. That's a guy who knows fighting. He didn't just get into fighting and become good at it because he was trained by good fighters and good coaches. Uriah Hall's a guy he's just a good specimen. If Uriah Hall was not trained and didn't go to MMA gyms and you put him in 20 street fights, he'd be 0-20. He would never have won a fight. Santos is a guy, you put him in 20 street fights, he'll win 17, 18 out of them. No MMA training. So that's the difference between how Strickland got caught once. That's a very rare event. It took a guy who's literally he knew that was his only chance of winning that fight by hitting him with something that he was never going to. So he worked hard for that knockout. I'm telling you now. So all these people saying, oh, he's the same type he does spinning kicks. Okay, so if I do this and Michael Jordan does this, does that mean we're all both going to be the same type of a basketball player? He'll annihilate me. Just because I look like I can do something the same doesn't mean we're the same type of a person. So don't be falling. Oh, speaking of that, well, I'm wearing his gear. I deserve it because I forgot I was wearing his jersey and I'm using him as an analogy. That's why you're a fan. You're not just somebody who wears the gear. What is it? Where is he from?
He's from Paraná.
Paraná. What is that like in Brazil?
Oh, that's good.
It's an area of just richer people, but he's 30 years old. So let's go 30 years back.
No, I don't know. It's in the south of the country, so it's actually a good part.
Well, she's saying that in Brazil, that's actually one of the better areas. So, look, it doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily mean just because it's listed that some people if you were born in Chicago but moved to Lansing or Wheeling, one of the nicest suburbs, you may put Wheeling as your but we don't know where he's from. But it doesn't mean that he didn't travel around or he wasn't used to the suburban surrounding areas. But usually just people from that part of the neck of the woods always grew up tough, and hearing the stories about the other types of people around them so even if you weren't in that area, you grew up prepared for that type of environment. So they grew up tough. Anyways, back on track. Okay, so yeah, Uriah Hall is not gonna look. Strickland is a kind of a guy. If you were in a gym of MMA fighters and there's 20 of them, and one of these guys spends 6 days a week here, this guy spends 5 days. Strickland's going to be that guy who you've never been to the gym without seeing him there. He's a gym rat. This guy travels and if he's not at that gym, he's at a different gym. He goes to a lot of different places. He's trained at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. He's gone to all the best places and gotten training from the best guys. His fundamentals, his reflexes, it's a combination of natural. He's got that Anderson Silva cat flight reflex. He's got that too because he doesn't like to get hit. That's why if you look at his most recent training video, he had an altercation with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist who almost tried to break his arm, but he saw it quickly. He recognized and pulled off of it. He's got great reflexes. So that's one of the reasons it's hard to catch him. Unless it's something that you manipulated him. He didn't get caught because he was not paying attention. He got caught because he was paying attention. It was just Dos Santos he hit him with his best weapon, but he set it up perfectly. He took him 2 rounds to get him so comfortable with thinking that the next thing was going to be something else that he was able to manipulate it, and it worked perfectly. It was just luck. Not luck. It was a little bit of a lot of things. Because if he had missed, you can bet your bottom dollar he wouldn't have had a second chance to land that kick. He would have been ready for it. So anyways, Uriah Hall, if you remember, Kenny and Florian, he said his prediction was first round knockout. Okay, guys. Then again, guys like me, there's a reason why there's not 10 guys giving 90% accuracy picks and guys who make as much money. Guys like me who predict fights like these, they make so much money on betting and helping friends and stuff. They don't need to do this. They don't need to work. I do it because it's a passion. And I almost felt obligated when I seen everybody else's channels and all the prediction. I was like, whoa, man, that is not a damn person who knows what they're talking about. So it was almost like a moral obligation. I felt bad for the community, to be quite frank. And I think that's why I picked up so quick. You've seen after 2 months, I was at almost 1,000 subscribers. And 4 months, I hit 220 patrons at 100, 150 a month. And I was scared. a few days ago, I did a list of 12 new people, 9-month customers. Because my subscriptions is set up to a platform called Patreon, where it's really nice. I love the company because they set you up on like sending out gifts after anniversaries, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I noticed 12 people got 9-month anniversary gifts. I've already spent thousands of dollars on 6 months gifts. So like I have more than 80% of my Patreon is 6 months and higher, but it didn't down like, wow, I'm at the 9-month already. So I thank God, I'm doing great, but and I don't do any advertising. I'm not a big name. I didn't start on no big platform. I started from nothing and nobody. I didn't even use hashtags. By the time I got to 1,000, I started to realize I'm supposed to use hashtags. So, I don't think I've hit my peak yet, but we'll get there one day, God willing, But anyways, so yeah, that guy, what's his name? Kenny Florian. He's predicting a first-round TKO loss by Strickland. Even if Strickland gets knocked out by a guy who spends thousands of hours a week perfecting his trade, doesn't make mistakes. He's got 25 minutes to be perfect. Every other time in the gym, he can mess around. He does things repetitive. He does his jab. He does his footwork. He does his angles repetitive 1,000 times over and over until he can't do it by any other way but perfection. What are the chances that in 25 minutes you're going to catch him making mistakes? So Uriah Hall, and if you remember his last fight, even against Silva, who was on his retirement fight, 2 fights in a row, his last 2 fights, Silva got taken out on a stretcher by guys who are not even championship material or top 5 caliber fighters, put him out in stretchers with like one exchange. It took Jared, whatever his name is, like again, name's not my thing. Whatever his name is, it took him 1 strike in the first round. His first offensive strikes put Silva in the hospital. The fight was over. It took Uriah Hall 3 or 4 rounds of getting his ass whooped by a guy who should not be fighting anymore before he realized, I'm about to lose this fight if I don't do something. 4 rounds, thank you. It took 4 rounds to realize I better do something. 4 rounds to losing. Now, here's my concern. I'm not going to lie. In his Phillips fight, Strickland showed, but that was Phillips. That's a guy who's never going to be top 20. A guy who's got no threat, no power, no nothing. In the end of the round, in the last round of the Phillips fight, Strickland did something that kind of upset me because people put money on this guy, people depending on him. And the most trouble he got into in that whole fight came after this. He told Phillips, hey, meet me in the middle of the fight. I'm going to give you a chance to win the fight. You're down 2 rounds, and the only chance you got is to knock me out. Come on and let's go fight in the middle of the ring. I'm going to give you a chance to knock me out. Instead of being smart, footwork, avoiding the fight, it's like what every other normal person would do. Instead of a guy who fights in the gas stations, like there's reports of this guy beating up people in the gas station. So, he's got something in his head that's a little loose. But that's kind of one of the things that makes him a good fighter, too. So we can't really knock him for it. But, yeah, that thing that he did in the Phillips fight concerns me because if he has a lopsided fight, if Uriah Hall doesn't wake up until the 4th round and he thinks he's safe, he's been lollygagging, and then all of a sudden something clicks on Uriah and he's like, I better go full force. I'm afraid that this guy's going to be... you would expect him to think that Uriah Hall, coming off of wins from former champions and legends, is not a Phillips, and he'll be more serious. He knows that this is an opportunity to get him to the next level where he's never been up to. The times that like he got stopped, every time he got close, it came to like that TKO loss or Usman. Besides the Usman loss, who else has beat this guy? Let's take a second and just really focus on this guy's record. Who has he beat? He beat Tom Breese when Tom Breese was known as the best of all time, the future, best of all. This guy had so much hype before his mental situation happened. He beat Breese when Breese looked unstoppable, and he made him look like he was out of his league. It was not even a close fight. The only time he went to decision. When Usman was putting everybody else away, he lost to Usman by decision. So he actually did hold a good account of himself even against the current champion. And that says a lot. For example, why was it a big deal when Vettori fought Israel Adesanya because he held a good of account of himself, and that made the odds kind of close. It was one of the only times we didn't see Israel Adesanya as a huge favorite, and people were kind of siding with the underdog and taking shots because he held a good account. This is like Vittori's. This is Israel Adesanya's Vittori. Strickland is that to Usman. So. And the guy's got talent. He's got skills. He's got that natural, like you can see, crazy recognizes crazy. I know a street fighter and a crazy guy when I see one. And I came from those neck of the woods around those types of people. I've been all types of places. So he's got natural. He's got the talent. He's got everything it takes to be a good fighter. But he spends time in the gym. This guy's a gym rat. He's not gonna make a mistake unless he shows off and showboats. So if you start to see him act crazy, you may want to hedge off in the 4th round. But until then, you're safe. Keep your money on Strickland. Smarter bet. Odd makers are being a little bit. Deontay. He's like Deontay Wilder. That's how we can compare Uriah Hall. He's always got that chance. He's got some sick speed. He's a physical specimen. There's nobody on the God green earth that you can't say that this guy on any given Sunday with the right kick, with the right punch, he can't take somebody's lights out. He's a physical specimen. He's a gym rat himself. While Strickland's working on techniques and fighting against black belts to be a better black. That's why, did you see when he took Brandon Allen to the ground? Brandon Allen tried to get out of the jiu-jitsu game. He didn't want to play no jiu-jitsu game with Strickland. How many times have you seen Allen not want any part of jiu-jitsu ground war game exchanges in any fight? He told Strickland, come down into my guard. Okay. He went down into his guard, beat the crap out of him down there, and made Brandon Allen want to go back into stand-up striking before he became this new version that we just saw against Punali Soriano, which is great for him. I've never seen somebody so, besides like maybe Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie fight but that was a long layoff. We seen after the Holloway embarrassing performance. It takes an embarrassing performance. Holloway was telling him in that fight, remember? No, like this. He was trying to he was teaching Ortega how to fight in the middle of beating him up. He started showing him, no, you're doing this wrong. He's like, you got to do this. He was actually trying to make fun of him and teach him how to fight in the middle or strike in the middle of their fight. Then we seen 2 years later, he came back as like some new, complete different striker and a lot of things he never used to do. That's what we saw from Allen. And it took that beat down from Strickland to make him that guy. And that's why a lot of fighters will tell their people, oh, this guy made me a better fighter. Or this guy brought the best out of me. That's very common. Sometimes a loss, I've always said this since the beginning. I rather sometimes bet on a guy coming off of a loss than a guy coming on a 6-fight win streak. There are sometimes a bit more advantages to that person. But it's still such a crap show. You got such a nice lady, Miranda Maverick, who was on my show a couple of times. Great woman, such a hard worker, another gym rat, spends a lot of time. It was disheartening to see after such a great performance. And I'm convinced that she must have thought there's 0% chance. It's one of the biggest robberies we've ever seen. Outside, maybe even worse than Rory McDonald versus Gleason T-Bone. That caused a big uproar. But this had everybody. Even Daniel Cormier, the guy who's like the biggest company man, who's usually always like making excuses for robberies, had to come out and say, hey, this was bad. I don't agree with this. This was some terrible judging. And then he said the same thing about the Phillips fight. So he probably got some good feedback when he said it about the Phillips fight. So then he really kind of like felt, pushed into like, yeah, go ahead. Because he first said it about the Phillips fight. He said, I don't agree with the judging. Phillips, I think, had a 10-8 round. He had a good second round. The third round, I give it to Uriah, whatever that guy's name is, the Brazilian guy. He did. I know that guy's a tough kid. So that's why, my first most confident pick, I wanted to make it Maverick. My lock of the week, only because of the value. She was almost at a pick'ems, almost an underdog. I made it my lock of the week for free patrons, like my $10 patrons. They got Miranda Maverick as because I consider value and safety combined. But my actual first, like my higher patrons got the actual list of most confident to least confident. My number one confident pick was Adrian Yanez, but not because I thought he had the best chance or he was the best fighter. I knew he was the least likely one to go to the decision scorecards because I know Maverick will win, but I just wasn't confident in the judges. And I even said that in his, I said, look, I don't see Maverick losing in any possible way, but this is a fight that could go to the judges. So for that reason, I'm giving you my first most confident best pick of the week for my higher patrons. It was Adrian Yanez. He was number one of my lock as far as my most, the lock of the locks was Adrian Yanez. I've never had my first, last week was like Islam. Then last week I gave 6+1 for the free patrons. Dricus Duplessis was the tier 2, but my 5 or 6 tier 1s all cashed in. The week before that, 4 tier 1s all cashed in. My tier 1s are beyond 90%. 90% would not be doing me justice. When I give tier 1 locks, 98% and higher. And if you go back and see, like, okay, heavyweight, like that guy who was like winning the fight and then one punch changed, or women's MMA or robberies, when you take that out, I'm probably 100% accuracy. If maybe one wrong, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, my tier 1 lock was Adrian Yanez because I knew he had what it takes to finish the fight. And that's why I gave them a prop bet for Yanez by TKO. I didn't expect a submission, so I didn't put inside the distance. I put Yanez by TKO was plus money. I gave them that as one of my best prop bets. Most likely outcome for the fight. I put Yanez by, so every fight they get a most likely outcome. That one cashed in. Uriah Eubanks by TKO plus 400 almost prop bet cashed in. We had some good prop bets. Like I do that for every fight every week. I did that for even the Muniz fight versus the last fight of. I have some nice ones on there, like plus 700, plus 2,000 was the, I always say this one because plus 2,000, who gets a plus 2,000 as their most likely outcome? That was the Rodolfo Vieira, Anthony Fluffy. And I even called the exact submission. I didn't just say submission. I told him how he was going to, I said he was going to shoot him for a desperate takedown. But then look, we saw Rodolfo Vieira come back. No takedowns, completely different guys. So the low-level fighters, the guys who make the biggest mistakes, that look the worst, you got to be careful about betting against them the next time. Like another example, Imanov against Heinisch. I've never bet against Imanov. I've always seen his potential. You know, I think that he made a mistake going to France and training with the French instead of sticking to the Dagestanis like he should have, and been more. His cardio is a bit of a problem. That's what kind of cost him. Even though I bet on him in the Rowe fight, and I think he did beat Phil Hawes. He did do enough to win. But in a close fight in UFC, you're not going to get fair judging. We've known this forever. People who are talking out about the judging now, I mean, like, where have you guys been? I've been talking about it since the Horace Gracie days. I mean, no, not that far back, but a pretty long time. I mean, that's when I started the sport. I remember I started this sport while people were watching wrestling when I was like 6 years old, 7 years old. I was watching and recording. I was recording videotapes and rewatching. I didn't just like the sport and watch it from the first UFC event ever, even like before Dana White was anybody. I was watching like the Ken Shamrock, Horace Gracie days. I was rewatching it and rewatching it and I've watched those fights hundreds of times before I even, like, if you talk to my first girlfriend and she like from 10 years ago, and then you told her this guy's talking about fights for a living, that's what he does now, she was like, yeah, no surprise, that's all he used to talk about, that's all he used to, be about. So, it's not a surprise I'm in this field. Fighting was all I ever thought about doing, and I went from wanting to fight to teaching. Like, even when I got injured, a motorcycle accident, I couldn't do it. I found a way to get back in with training them, and then when I got away from training, I got into this by natural. And I wasn't even. Somebody talked me into doing this job. I wasn't even the one that was pursuing this. I was pushed into doing this by somebody who said that. But then when I looked into it, and I started seeing all the other people, I said, these guys don't know anything about fights. They don't know anything about fights. They just saying things to say them, or hearing somebody else say them and then repeating them. But I enjoy the success that it brings other people. If you see the thousands of messages from people, thank you, I paid my bills this month, or I made this much money and I feel good because my boss is a piece of crap and he treats me like this, but I told him, you know what, I don't need, like, people feel good because of what I do for them. So it's a good feeling even if I wasn't making good money. But thank you all for the support and the continued contribution. It comes with haters too. Like there's a guy, Lowton makes fun. He thinks he's doing me. The guy gives me 300 of my views are coming from Lowton. He comes to go look at my old videos, 270 dislikes. Do you think there's really 270 people on a video where I got perfect picks? Like 2 weeks ago, I went 2-0 in picks, not one wrong pick. I had like 80 dislikes. It's all the same guy going through different IP addresses. Like the guy spends 8 hours a day disliking my videos and leaving like comments from a YouTube channel that was just opened 1 hour ago, comes and leaves comments like that he hates my video. Dude, you're a new YouTube guy from an hour ago and you said the same thing that the last new YouTube guy from. So, and he admits to it, but I get it. I'm intimidating to these guys. They've been doing it for years. And until this day, Lowton doesn't have 50% of my revenue. He has 300. He shows this 300 at $5. That's not even 20%. What is that? Let's just say 3,000 a month. It's not even, it's like 2,000, but let's say 3,000. What is that? What is that percentage to my monthly revenue? Like what I made last month? 20%, 25%?
Yeah, something like that.
We did 22,000. That was in April. So let's just say April. That was not even my best month. And I'll put a screenshot on it. People don't make this much money from being stupid or being wrong. My accuracy got me here. I didn't just overnight become a guy who had 200 subscribers. It went from 50 to 70 to 80 to 100. I had to keep people to see the number growing. Because if it's not a yearly contract, it's month to month. If somebody signed up for a month and didn't see results, didn't see something worth something to sign up for, they drop out. Then it was just, but I went from 50 to 200 to, like, when Lowton put that post about me on his website, his own customers were saying this is beneath you. He spent like a whole day making posts about me. It was ridiculous. His own people were telling him this is beneath you and whatever, because he was intimidated, and so until today he still goes at it, but it helps me. I expect that. Jordan had threats, people telling him they were going to kill his dad, guys that Jordan never even came across. He never even met them, were saying things like, I'm going to kill your father. That's like got to be the worst thing in the world. You have to hate somebody. You would imagine they had to do something personally to you, like say F your mother or something like that, for you to have to want to kill somebody's father. That's what they did to Jordan, just because of his success, how good he was, and until today, still seen as one of the greatest. People knew that. Other guys, Tupac and Biggie, they were afraid of each other's success. They didn't just two guys that didn't like each other. You think it was a coincidence that Tupac and Biggie were trying to kill each other, literally killing each other? And they happen to be two guys that are still today considered the greatest. Anytime you're the greatest at anything, you're going to have haters. Go look at those channels with 80 views for 2 weeks that don't even have 100 views. They got more likes than I do. So, that just shows I'm doing something right. If you're not getting hated on, you're not doing something right. All right, so you got my pick of the week. For the breakdown, for the main event, Strickland is your guy. If you start to see him showboating in the 4th round, if you don't see him still looking as sharp, doing the same movement, doing the same everything that he was doing in the earlier rounds, maybe hedge off. But if Strickland comes in serious, has his own self, doesn't showboat, 9 out of 10 times he wins this fight. Maybe 10. It's not even a close fight. These guys are two different sides. They're two different animals, two different levels of the sport. Not even close. Like, well-roundedness, mixed martial arts in the sports, like in a fair fight, in MMA's rules and guidelines with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, not even close. This is a mismatch of mismatches. It could be a wider line. The only reason that the line is justified at minus 200, Strickland can sometimes be a showboat, a show-off. He can start to, but it's not because he's likely to get knocked out like the guys are saying by a spinning kick. That was a freak accident, and that was a very well played out. There's a reason why it's only happened once in his career. That's so Dos Santos guy. He's got a good record. He's a high level guy, but he planned it. He planned it just like anything else. Like what we see Peter Yan do a lot of times. So he throws a fake jab, just to see where your head is going, where you're wobbling and weaving, so that when he opens up with the real offensive strike that he wants to go out with, he knows where you're positioned. All high level fighters do it. He just did it perfectly. He was willing to lose a round to get him comfortable into thinking that there's nothing else coming. You figured out the combination. You know what I'm going to be doing after the second, third time. And that's how he landed that kick. He surprised him by changing up for the one and only time he attempted it. It landed. It wasn't coincidence that it was the only time he attempted. It was perfect precision. Uriah Hall is not that type of a fighter. He's the type that waits for mistakes, openings, or just goes caution to the wind. Like in the Silva fight, he knew he was backed into. He's like, Silva's going to win. He's already got 4 rounds on me. I better do something desperate. That's the type of a fighter Hall is. So you don't win that type of a fight against a guy at a high level who doesn't make mistakes like Strickland. Strickland's movement, his fundamentals, his BJJ, everything is just sound. He's at the highest level of the sport. So that's his record speaks highly of him as well. His reputation, he's known as one of the best in the world. So he's deserving of it. And I think that this is going to be a spot where he's really going to know, I cannot screw up. I cannot showboat. I'm not going to do that thing that I did in the Phillips fight where I told him to come on and get your chance. Because Phillips did land some good shots. It was his best shots were in that last round where Strickland invited him to come meet him in the middle and slug it out to give him a chance. That's how crazy he is because he's confident. It doesn't come. He wasn't in his mind risking losing the fight. He wasn't really giving Phillips that chance to win the fight. He was just showing off some of it. A lot of fighters do that because you'll notice. Who else does that? There's a lot of situations you can think of where, like, when the fights are getting boring, Silva used to do this a lot when his opponents used to be like so afraid they were frozen. He said, come on. He used to invite them. So they want entertaining fights. So when it's a mismatch, sometimes they feel like the fight will not be remembered. Their performance will not be as highly recognized and appreciated when they don't see that the competition is up to par. But when you see an opponent that's given some good, a run for his money, then you really appreciate the win. So that's what every fighter, a real fighter, not a guy just doing it for a paycheck or just for rankings, a real fighter wants that, Batman, like Joker always says, I need Batman. Every fighter needs his, like, guy who's going to push him to the next level. That's a real fighter. All right.
What fight do you want to talk about? The Strickland fight? Which fight are you mentioning that? You're saying Phillips. It's not Phillips. Who is it? The fight that you're saying that he was telling the guy to come.
Oh, yeah. Tony Phillips, I think. Which one was it? Give me like 2 fights ago before Allen.
Before Allen, he had
Jack
Marshman.
Jack Marshman. Thank you,
for
names.
I opened
he reminds me. He reminds me of the Phillips guy. Reminds me of the guy who Kamzat beat. But okay, that guy Jack Marshman. Jack Marshman is who I meant. He invited him to come and fight with him at the last final round. He was destroying him in the first 2 rounds. And then at the 3rd round, if you remember, just listen closely. He was telling him, "Come on, I'm gonna give you a chance to win the fight," because it was a mismatch. But he actually got hit with some big shots. Like, that was stupid of him. The most he ever got hit was during that moment. And so he wouldn't give a guy like Uriah Hall that chance. I would hope not. But if you see him acting a fool in the later rounds, which I don't think he'll do in a fight like this, then that's the only way I can see this fight going the other way. But when he's like actually fighting his best at 100% himself, no robberies, no that, he's going to win 9 or 10 out of 10 times in this fight. He's the better, smarter pick. All right. Oh, yeah. Who was Jack Marshman's fight before that?
Okay, 1 second.
It wasn't. So I'm thinking, you know what? Pull up Kamzat Shemaev's fight. That's why I kept confusing Jack Marshman for.
Okay, Jack. Okay, do you want to...
Pull up Kamzat Shemaev because it's a different guy. His name was Phillips. The Turtle ended up beating that guy too, Phillips. I don't know. I always confuse Jack Marshman and that Phillips guy.
Oh, I can't. Just wait 1 second.
I come prepared.
Okay, so John Phillips?
John Phillips. That's why I keep confusing Jack. They look alike too, guys. I'm telling you, they look alike. They fight the same. They're both cans. So sorry for confusion. Again, That's how you know I don't go off paper. I don't listen to anybody else's podcasts. I don't cheat. Everything is coming from strictly opinion and heart and mind of a fighter. I don't, write things. I don't take notes. You want to see my notes? Uriah Hall versus, here's my notes. Uriah Hall versus Strickland. That's my notes, but it's all up here. If you tell me any fight, I'll talk about every fighter and every fight for 2 hours each. No notes. That's how you know it's all, I don't need to worry about forgetting it. But anyways, all right, so I'm going to bring you another one for Bellator coming up next. Hit the like, hit the reminder, subscribe, join the Patreon if you want to make some real money. I'll give you full fight predictions and picks and parlays, prop bets, everything, the shirt off my back. Just kidding. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Hit the like, hit the reminders. And let's try to, leave some comments. It helps the algorithm for the channel I hear. So, I say it. Thank you guys. See you on the next video.